representative of our government. So that's
sort of,
maybe the better way to say this. I'm actually interested in what the relationship is between this program, Ambtenaar 2.0, and the NOIV, the open source, open standards initiative van Heemskerk. Is there a relationship, and
No.
if so, could you elaborate why not, or why there is one?
Well, as I said, this is a network, so it's not actually linked to any official projects except my personal project that I'm doing at the Ministry of Agriculture. And we're trying to stay away from that because it's not where our power is, so to say. I mean, this is a network. It's just the reason that there are 2,000 members, that is why people notice it, and that is how we put Government 2.0 on the agenda. Which is a different thing from, well, of course there are government organizations also working on different aspects of, well, for example, open source software, but also Government 2.0. My colleague who was here yesterday, he's working for part of the Ministry of the Interior that works on e-participation and Government 2.0. But it's a different thing than a network of people.
The open and empowerment, I see a direct link with the objectives of the free software, the open standards communities.
Sure.
And I can imagine that it's really hard to start a new project from scratch, basically. And it might be very useful to gather the energy and ideas of the people that are surrounding within these communities that are already fluent, basically, of the language of open empowerment communities and all these kind of things, because there might be a slight difference between the Web 2.0 and the openness and the socialness, and that's one of the the critical note that I would like to put forward. It's really important to see the difference between Web 2.0, which might have a lot of things included which have nothing to do with openness, socialness, or empowerment.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because as a background as a journalist, I thought you might be able to answer this. One of the, some governments have embraced this Web 2.0 for their benefit of communication sharing within government. So the U.S. military has got Intellipedia, so that different agencies that wouldn't otherwise talk to each other. And then there's the element of sharing outside. I'd be interested to know, would you have a view on how successful the Dutch civil service, not talking about politics, has been in each of those? Could you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being reaching its capacity of what it could be versus where it's at today?
Oh, right. In using these internally, you mean, like Intellipedia?
One is internally, and then one is the external with the community. So using the technology first for internal.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think we're using it better externally than internally, because externally it's very easy to well, for example, set up blogs or start twittering or whatever, and getting people together. Doing all these e-participation projects. I think actually externally we're doing that better, all these different organizations, all these different local councils and that sort of thing, than internally, because internally it's actually a problem that there's a lot of organizations and there's a lot of different systems being used, so it's actually hampering collaboration internally. So it's a lot harder to start working with these tools internally and with this way of working than externally. So, but still, we're just starting. I think there's, I usually write about the potential, and then you're always thinking, well, the potential is over there somewhere, and now we're here. And a lot of colleagues I know are still over there. So, if I were to rate it, I would still give it a 2 out of 10, something like that.
For the internal. For the external,
that would be 1 then.
There are other questions?
And the potential is enormous, but
That's good to know.
We're just starting out.
Hi, I definitely applaud your efforts being here and interacting with the community. I'm from America. If this ever happened in America, there would be a revolution if civil servants and government started talking, especially in the hacker community. I noticed a lot of what you talked about with 2.0. You talked about things being involved in the community, but you also talked about there being a community organizer and a dictator. I'm curious why, when hackers talk about things, we don't need a leadership. Here at HAR, there's thousands of people. There doesn't need to be an overarching structure. There definitely doesn't need to be a dictator with ultimate power. So my question is, why, when government or people from the government start talking about 2.0, why does there need to be a dictator with ultimate power, even though you admit that that's been a really horrible idea in the past? Why do we need an outdated concept like a dictator?
Well, I got that from an open source book, actually, but open source community. But I do have an answer. I do have an answer to that, because finally you have to get a document or a decision ready for politics, as I was talking about with Michiel. So you do have to have a certain goal in reaching a point where there's there's a document or a decision ready to be sent to Parliament, or to be sent to a minister or a council or whatever. And in that process, there's a lot of things that you have to weigh, so to say. So there has to be someone who has the role of, community manager or whatever, a role or a process manager, or what you call it. So someone has to have the role to keep that or that date in the back of his mind, and the point that he wants to get at. But I think the change is in how you get other people to join in that, in building that final decision. And like I said, in getting the right ideas in getting the right knowledge in, perhaps in getting the right opinions in as well. But I think as soon as you start about opinions, it's nice to have a view of what opinions there are around a certain subject, but you can't really do anything with them, because as soon as you start weighing them, you're getting in a sort of a democracy situation, and that's not the goal. Our goal as civil servants. That's at the end of the line when it gets to politics. So, as I said, in getting the knowledge and ideas together and taking steps towards a decision that you can lay before a minister or an alderman or whatever, in that area, you do need someone to pinpoint that process, so to say.
The manager. You need a manager.
Yes, the process manager. Right, that's what I said. Also, finally, you were also talking about Obama as a politician. The reason why I chose him, because he was trying very hard in his campaign to use, of course, these methodologies, new methods, to get attention and get people involved. And he's trying to do that as well now in how the United States government is going to work. With data.org, starting all kinds of discussions. So he is looking for ways to make it this idea of government 2.0 actual, and that's why I think it's an interesting process. And I hardly see any other countries doing that. So I'm very interested in what's happening there. And of course, Australia does have a sort of a task force that is looking into all the possibilities and how they should be, where they should be going. But
I've got just one last question. So
last question.
Anything else before? I know there was an interesting case in Washington D.C. where the local government there